It was one of those Monday mornings. I decided I want to leave my well-paying startup job and jump into photography full-time. When asked why I quit, I jokingly always say I couldn't find parking in Bangalore. Being one of the first employees of Amazon India almost 2 decades ago and then working at a new startup not only gave me the courage to try something new, but also paid for my first camera. When I got into photography initially, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was shooting travel pictures, I was doing food photography, I was doing portraits, I was doing everything. But I think eventually I focused on wildlife because I think I really started enjoying that genre of photography. Swinging my camera around and gallivanting the world. What's not to like in it? But shooting elephants and tigers from the comfort of your Jeep can only get you so far. And when I started experimenting with an intent to tell unique stories, the challenges started. How do you tell new stories of wildlife beyond the big animals and the ever-seen photographs? So I had to push myself to get into areas that people had not photographed before. So I realized pretty quick that if I wanted to make this my career, I had to really step out of the comfort zone and keep pushing that boundary. I had to go to places with bare essentials. And this is how a new journey started. I would stay at research stations with no electricity, anti-poaching camps with no running water or even a room. You can clearly see that the only thing separating these camps from wild elephants is just a trench. Though it all sounds very difficult, in reality, I was thoroughly enjoying it. You know, not just getting out of your comfort zone, but also challenging yourself to try something new, to push the boundaries, is a very interesting journey in itself. And moreover, experiencing the pristine forests where wild animals still roamed freely and being surrounded by calls of nature, I felt was truly my home. The excitement and joy of all this was short-lived, as my earnings dropped to just 5% of what I used to earn with my previous salary. This was also the time of global economic recession. I don't know if my timing was wrong or maybe it was just right. I stopped going to movies on the weekend, stopped eating out at restaurants, all of these things. But I think it was only my passion that was keeping me from falling back because I was doing what I really loved. And it dawned upon me that I was getting paid to do what other people pay to do. And photography was fulfilling most of my needs of travel and telling these stories. But I also realized the limitations of telling stories with photographs. I felt I needed something more to do justice to these stories. I realized I had to move to another dimension of visual medium. So to tell stories that were more immersive and impactful, I felt films would be the right choice. And they would also reach a wider audience. This was the time when the first video digital SLRs were launched. And I thought to myself, how hard can it be? Just record instead of click. And oh boy, how I was mistaken. Videos and films are a whole new world. To just give you a basic setup, it involves research, scripting, pre-production, shooting, editing, color grading, music, narration. And all of this has to come together to tell a story that's well woven. And while photography was a solo job, this meant I had to work with teams. And not just work with a large team, but also get everyone on the same wavelength. If I needed a week for a single photograph, I would need months to get one sequence right. And just to give you like an insight of what this process could look like, I'd like to share some experiences of our last film, Wild Karnataka, which was the first Indian wildlife film to be shown in theaters across the country and also completed 50 days. This was the first film to have had the privilege of being shown at the United Nations headquarters in New York. It also won the very prestigious 67th National Award. So while me and my team had worked on several international companies like National Geographic and BBC, attempting something completely on our own at this scale was a first. So where does one start? You have to raise money, you have to convince some people to give you a whole lot of money just based on faith. Definitely not easy. You have to assemble a crew that can deliver international quality. figure out what sequences you're going to film, what kind of equipment you need, how do you get them all into India, there's customs, a lot of things are not available here, how do you get the crew to train with all this new equipment? Oh, it was definitely not an easy task. But I've always believed in one thing. Give your honest effort and things will usually work out. And for us, it took 4 years and almost about 15,000 hours in the field for the film to really come out. Why did it take us 4 hours and 15,000 hours, you ask? Like they say, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. Every time we would plan a sequence, it would hardly work out. We wanted to film the waterfalls, and for 2 years, we just did not have sufficient rains. One of the most important sequences in our film was the elephant congregation that takes place every year in a place called Kabini. And we just never witnessed it when we were filming. So how do you keep chugging when the elements of nature are not cooperating? It's the hardest thing to keep running when you can't even see the goal. But all you have to tell yourself is to move one step at a time. We even ran short of our funds due to our prolonged filming. But we resorted to some good old Indian jugaad, as you can see in this video. One of the things about an independent production is that you're always strapped for cash and you have to make do with whatever little you have. As you can see, our seats are these beds made from a local town here. They cost 400 rupees each. And of course, this is our vehicle, and it has some sort of a shock absorber. Not really what you would call shocks. We also broke our glass and we ended up doing some sort of an art. But the final thing we needed is a crane and a stabilizing gimbal. We didn't have the resources for it, but here's our own homegrown setup where what we're doing is we're mounting our aerial drone, which has a very, very powerful gimbal, onto the bonnet. Of course, this is not supposed to fly right now. It's got no propellers. And what we're going to do is film all the wild animals that we're going to see on the safari with this, and controlling that from within inside with the remote. Well, that's the typical Indian jugaad for you. This is the current setup. You can see that the road is really bouncy and jumping across. You can see in the screen, video is quite stable. This is our current setup. In fact, one of the stories we really wanted to capture was of this frog called the Kumbara frog, which means a potter frog. This frog builds a nest using mud with its hands and mouth, putting saliva on the mud and like a potter. And it only happens in the Western Ghats and only in the thick of monsoons. And of course, like all frogs, they have to do all this in the middle of the night. So we tried a whole year to get this behavior, but we just did not see the behavior. We would go and film the frogs, but they would not do whatever they're supposed to do. So we kept trying night after night, and the rain stopped and the frogs disappeared. We went the second year to film the exact same thing, and finally after about 10 days, I think one of the nights at about 11 o'clock, we finally filmed the behavior. But because we already had too many frogs in the film, we had to let go of this sequence. So sometimes you would have put in all the hard work, but it doesn't make into the film. So one should be ready for all of these things. But when all things come together and it pays off, you really know that all your hard work really worked. And a great example of that is how Sir David agreed to do our film. Growing up watching Sir David Attenborough's films, my only wish was to meet him someday and get a book signed. Little did I know that he would agree to do our film and voice a script that was written by me. It was surely bigger than any dream of mine. And a lot of people ask me, how did you get him to sign? And somebody said, just ask him nicely, he might agree. And more importantly, he liked our film. He saw the hard work that's gone into it, and he said, it's a great film about the backyard and he would like to do this. And I think now I've seen a pattern for success in my own life. I think it's about having the right intent and putting in all the hard work. The intent is pure and one is ready to put in hard work, it usually pays off. I have seen 2 economic recessions in my career. Each time it's only made me more resilient and tenacious. And each time it's made me persevere harder than before. I've never worked towards awards or recognitions, but I've also never dreamt of the recognition and accolades my work has received so far. There have been, to put simply, the side effects. My only goal has been and continues to be is to share the privilege of experiencing this planet, its beauty, and its stories to the world. For me, a smile on a kid's face after seeing one of our films is truly the biggest reward. So I think, if I look back and count everything that's happened to me, I would just say that, results are not quick, especially in a field like wildlife. There are no shortcuts. So I'd like to wrap by saying what I've observed, not just in me, but all the people who I look up to. Keep your goal true and be persistent. I've hardly seen this formula fail. The forests of Bhadra are known for their extremely sort of charismatic tigers, more than any other park that I've visited in India. And Vijay himself is a photographer, so he's got some pictures that he's taken of these tigers and cubs.